This is a video response to a video by msknight that she posted on Vimeo. The original title of her video was Depression and Stuff, and it was actually a response to a question asked of her by TheLastPost about, well, the stuff aspect being sort of the physical items that we own, and I suppose the effect of those things on our lives and the ownership of items in general, especially when it comes to a point where we probably own too many things. It's definitely worth watching Michelle's response video. It's quite interesting. Something I can really relate to in so many different ways. And she also reads out the original question that she was asked by TheLastPost, which I'm not going to do here. You're better off just watching that. So obviously I've got the camera set up at the minute, pointing down at what some people will probably recognise as an Amiga 500 Plus mainboard. And I thought I'd start the video like this, which might seem an unusual way to start it when it's more of a talky video about a particular subject, which my video I've called Stuff Overload. And I think for me, the stuff is the physical items, the physical objects. But I think there's also, for me, I'm thinking of stuff more as the emotional overload that can occur in life, which I think ultimately, certainly in my case, and I think from what Michelle said in her video, has resulted in kind of a state of disarray and probably having too many things on the go, too much to deal with, too many items, too many objects, too much stuff. So there's probably going to be quite a few cuts in this video because it's something that's quite difficult to fully articulate. I've struggled. I've already made one video, and again, a bit like Michelle, I kind of abandoned it because it didn't really work out too well, the video I made. I wasn't happy with some of the roads that I was going down that I was trying to talk about. So if there's a few jumps in here and there in the video, that'll be why. It's probably because I've just stopped, or if I've needed the time to sort of think about what it is I want to say. So I thought I'd start with this particular view, the normal downward camera view that I have here, because I think this illustrates quite an interesting point, particularly when you sort of watch a lot of YouTube videos, especially like the highly polished ones. Not that I consider mine in any way to be polished. I do the minimum amount of editing I need to get the video done, and even that still takes far too long. But I thought this was quite interesting because this could easily be the beginning of a video about an A500 Plus, and I could go on for half an hour or whatever about that and just knock out another ordinary video. But I thought instead, what we'll do, because I'm on the smaller camera today, is I'm unfortunately going to go wobbly cam here, but as you can see, the bench here is a bit of a mess. The room that was going to be kept clear and not used for dumping things in is also a bit of a mess. All that. Take a step back. It's not ideal. I mean, there's things I want to do in here right now and I can't do them because I need to tidy up. And to be perfectly honest, I cannot be bothered. I think I will be actually bothered once I've done this video, but I've been struggling to sort of do much in here. I've wanted to tidy up, but I've also had the conflict that I've wanted to do stuff. And what tends to happen when you want to get on, you perhaps push yourself past a limit of time that you shouldn't do, and then you'll stop the project late, and there won't be enough time really to tidy up and put tools away, and as you can see, and then the next day maybe you'll carry on with that project, maybe start another one, and all that really happens is it just builds up and builds up, as has happened here. I mean, it just looks like a pile of junk, which, well, perhaps to some people it is, and maybe they're right, but there's actually really in some respects, I mean, I can look around here and I can see exactly what's happened, and you'll see here, this is that PC I was building to test the drives on. It's still not been finished. I have used it to test the drives that I wanted to, and they were okay, great, but I've not finished building it, and it was in the way, so I've dumped it down here out of the way because this A500 Plus came along. A bit of a problem with this whole thing anyway, which depending on whether or not I end up keeping it, I may or may not do a video on. And then I also wanted to, there's a decision I need to make with this, but I also wanted to do something else which involves using either infrared or ultraviolet light to try and show up damage to a PCB when there's been battery leakage. I've definitely seen a video of this somewhere, but I cannot find it again. So I was trying to have a go at that, which is why I've got infrared floodlight thingy out here that's also not working properly, so that's another job. I've got an old Handycam here, which these are IR sensitive. We've got an IR mode on them, so you can use them to view things, although this is really old, not good quality. I've got a UV light here, and then there's just an array of stuff. I mean, floppy drive out the Amiga. This is from the monitor I took apart ages ago. That's the motherboard from the PC that I stripped out to build this thing with. And it's just a historic trail of debris from various things that have happened. You know, I bought one of these PCB stand things that I wanted to have a go with and maybe do a bit of a review on, but it's just got chucked in here. This is where it will live, but not on the floor. It's not been given a proper place, and it's this. At the minute, there's a conflict of time because I am now working again. I decided to take time out. Well, I don't know, it wasn't so much a decision. Something I had to give, and my old job I quit. A job I'd been working for 12.5 years, so it wasn't an easy decision. And it wasn't my intention, but I ended up not working for 2 years, near enough 2 years. And it's got to be probably 6, 7, might even getting on for 8 weeks ago now. I started my new job, and it's been hard. It's been very hard to adjust to that, the old balance of the work-life balance, which I've got to be honest, I don't think it is balanced. I think that's a big part of the problem. I think that's a big problem that a lot of people are having, even if it's just a normal, well, everyone says 9 to 5, and a lot of jobs are sort of half 8 to 5, but I think even at that, even jobs where people aren't doing like 10, 12 hour shifts and crazy overtime, sometimes even working Saturdays, I think even without all of that stress, which I don't really know how people manage, I think the balance is still not right. There's not enough free time. It's not just having the actual time itself, but when you've been at work, you need to have a bit of time to shut off from it, and sometimes it's not even possible to do that. So I think that's been a bit of a problem. I've struggled. So this room has ended up getting in this quite a bit of a state over these last few weeks, and I think that's partly why. I mean, it's sort of a bit of a motivational issue, but also just being tired. I mean, I got home on the Friday this week, all good intentions of getting various things sorted out that needed doing, getting all the jobs out of the way, you know, getting the washing done and trying to get it out on the line and dried, getting some of the ironing done, just pots that had piled up, just all the menial jobs out of the way, have a tidy up, get this bit of place organised, and I ended up falling asleep. And I was done like an hour or two after getting home from work. I was asleep all night, ended up waking up early hours of the morning, which is actually when I found Michelle's video and watched that, which kind of prompted me and got me thinking about all of this. So obviously when things get to a point like this, it's not good. It's not a mentally healthy place to be. I'm somewhat reluctant to want to put something like this up because it's, I suppose, it's a degree of potential embarrassment with doing something like this, but it's also, I guess it's not the reflection of me that I want people to see, but at the end of the day, there's a reality here, and you know, we all sort of want everyone to see the best of ourselves, but you know, sometimes things aren't as they should be. And I think if we keep hiding these things, then it doesn't actually do anyone any good. So I'm back in this other room again now, and this has been shown before. This was on my first video, and if anyone's sort of seen that or looked back and watched it or whatever, I did mention then that There was a kind of a stuff overload, I suppose. Too many things, and more to the point, so many things that it had gotten to the point where it was difficult to get at what I needed to do, the projects that I wanted to work on, regardless of whether or not I had that inclination, the drive, motivation, whatever word you want to use. It all comes down to the same thing, pretty much just getting up and getting on with it. But it's not always as simple as just getting up and getting on with it. You can try and just look at it and think, no, I'm not interested. So I built this large sort of shelf unit here. One, because I needed a bit more space to get organised. Obviously there's always a danger in creating more space, because the more space you create, the more space you end up filling if you're not careful. And this has definitely helped. I mean, if it wasn't for doing this, then I probably wouldn't still be doing my videos. I wouldn't have got much done project wise, because this has helped me get more organised and have that sort of accessibility to the bits that I need to do the projects that I want to work on. I think anyone who's struggling with having too many things, too many items, one of the first things you've got to do, one of the key things, is to get organised and have things in a place. And that at least gives you then the opportunity to then go through those boxes of things and say, well, do I actually need it? Which is a whole big subject in itself. So I think in my original video, this is pretty much what I showed. I mean, obviously things have changed around. I've rearranged boxes and stuff. There's a load of towers and things here. They've gone. Unfortunately, as with a lot of people, you get rid of something but then replace it with something else. But at least, although that's not necessarily always a good thing, especially when a situation like I'm in, I'm totally overloaded. You know, we're talking sort of, I don't like to use the word hoarding, because not because of any kind of denial or shame, but actual hoarding, when you see people who are really, really unable to get into their homes, it's, I guess it's like a lot of terms really, you don't want to use them flippantly, and I don't really want to use that term flippantly, but I can say that I've been in a situation where I've had so much stuff around me and things stacked up on the floor, like you'll see in this room, you'll see exactly what I mean, that it has affected my life, and it has negatively affected my life. And I think that really is where you can definitely say there's a problem that needs addressing. And again, in Michelle's video, she was talking about rules and boundaries, not necessarily physical boundaries, but I think also physical boundaries as well are a help. And I have to agree there. I made the decision to set up the project room specifically because, well, one, it was the smallest room upstairs, so it was easier to clear the smallest room because there was less in it to move elsewhere, because obviously I've got to move that stuff somewhere else or get rid of some of it to clear that room and free it up. It was easier to heat because I've not got sort of heating upstairs as such, not proper radiators upstairs, because it's an old house. It was I suppose a cheap buy, but there were reasons for that. It's not been very well loved, as you can probably tell. So yes, the idea with the rules and the boundaries was I'd set rules for that room which I've clearly broken. I mean, and I know that, and I think that's the fact that the rules and the boundaries are still set. It's still, you know, it's not, oh well, that's it, it's over, it was pointless. It's not. I know the rules have been broken. I know the boundaries have been pushed. So I now know I need to go in there and sort that out. So that idea of having the rules and boundaries is a really good idea. And my rules and boundaries for that room were to only have perhaps 1 or 2 projects on the go at any one time, which is clearly broken. To not use it as a dumping ground, which I've clearly broken. And generally to try and keep stuff in there that's either relevant to what I'm working on or things that I need fairly frequent access to. You know, certain tools, soldering stuff, screws. I'm working on a lot of PCs, so I've got a few PC bits in there that are commonly needed, like power cables and SATA cables, that kind of thing. And I think there I've not done too bad. I mean, the rules haven't been that badly broken there, but certainly the other 2 have. Also showed some of this in a previous video as well. This is unfortunately another upstairs room. and where this sort of mackled together thing that's been made from an old table and God knows what else has been put. I used to actually have a desk, a big desk that I've got downstairs now. I needed the desk because I was fed up with downstairs always being a mess, because I used to try and work on everything downstairs in the living room. And what would happen is then my sort of main living space, which is one of the places that I spent most of my time and I'd walk into from work, would be a mess. And when you walk home from work into a mess, you're psychologically already on a downer before you even start. And so I made the rule to try and keep downstairs tidy and clear and have just my main computer set up down there. So I had to take the desk that I've got here, because that was actually being used as a storage unit, and set that up downstairs. And obviously that's how I built this. And this room was, as I joked about in my first video, home warehousing, and it's crazy. People are probably thinking, what in the hell is all this stuff? So now we're downstairs, and as you can see, again, things aren't going too well. And this is really happened, I think, in this last few weeks. Stuff's just built up, and I've been putting things on the desk. Oh, I need to deal with that when I get home. Like, for example, this tray out of the fridge is broken, and it's been broken ages. It's been left in the fridge. So I thought, okay, I'll put it on the desk, then I'll deal with it. And it's been there another week, and I can't be bothered. I've not touched it. And it's down to state of mind and tiredness, really. Not got any problem with my new job. I'm actually probably about the happiest I've been in a long time, but there's still sort of an imbalance somewhere, and I'm not able to get on with things. And again, as I say, there were rules set, and I've obviously broken them. And this is to me saying, you know, get this right. And you can clearly see, I mean, I've made an attempt to be neat and tidy. These shelves, well, there were other fairly horrible shelves here. I mean, these aren't much better. And this was all filled with random bits and pieces, and I cleared all that. As you can see, I like lava lamps and things, so I decided to set them up and make use and have something nice in the room as well, not just stuff and work, just something nice. And I've built a new shelf there for my printers to go on, so they were out the way, because obviously they take up a big chunk of space. And if you see under here, I don't know if it will show, there's power cables and a Wi-Fi access point that hardly gets used, and I've put all the cables underneath the shelf so they're not on show. Everything's cable tied up. Down here, all the cables are all neatly out of the way. Networking stuff at the back of the desk out of the way. So it's not that I don't want to say that I'm not a messy person. Clearly I am at times, and this is one of those times, but it's not how I want to be. It's just, it can be a battle to keep on top of things when the work-life balance isn't right, or when you're struggling with something or readjusting, or when there are problems going on that are hard to deal with, which is probably one of the things I'm going to go into a little bit. So I'm back here again, and I don't know how obvious it is looking at these boxes, but to me it's obvious, but there's certainly different projects. There's like a box here of laptops for things I wanted to do. 486 here is actually 486 related stuff. I think there's 2 boxes of that now. Another project I wanted to just build an old 486 system up. Just a retro PC, I guess. And the problem here is the projects keep getting added to. I'm someone that finds lots of things interesting, not just computers and technology, but many other things as well. And when you're that sort of person, you're constantly coming up with new things you'd like to have a go at, new things you'd like to make, new things you'd like to learn about. If you get to a point where you're really struggling with things in life, and it could be anything, it could be work related, it could be personal relationships with not necessarily a partner or family members, health issues, any number of things, especially if you have a multitude of those things going on, it can make it very difficult to allow you to materialize those ideas. And yes, you can materialize the easy bit, which is, well, I want to make this, So I'm going to go on eBay or wherever, and I'm going to buy all these bits, and they'll arrive, and you feel all good and happy about it, and you get that buzz about doing something, and all the bits arrive, and then the hard work comes. And you get home, and if you're not in the right frame of mind, you think, well, I'll do it tomorrow. And then eventually all these projects get shelved, and you move on to the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, and then everything just builds up and builds up and builds up, which is somewhat what's happened with me. I've had a few years that haven't been the best, really, which is ultimately why I chose to quit my job. I wasn't expecting to be off for 2 years. I didn't really know what I needed time-wise. I just know I needed time for me, and I wasn't really able to get that time. I could have got signed off on the sick, possibly. The various reasons I didn't want to go down that route. So I just said, that's it, enough's enough. Something has to give. I'm not going to let it be me. Although, to some degree, I did give, and I walked away from it. And you would think after two years off of work, all of this would have been dealt with. But the problem is, when there are situations that have affected you, especially over a very long period of time, which some of them had, and other things going on. I mean, I've lost a couple of friends over the last probably the first 3 or 4 years of the last 5 years. There's been a number of things, lost a couple of friends, one of them to suicide. My dad died, who I didn't particularly have the best relationship with, which was one of the ongoing negativities in my life. And I took time off work, I quit. The first weekend I didn't really do much, as you'd expect. Then the Monday morning I sort of surprised everyone. I'd got up and I was getting on, doing things, I think outside, because the weather was quite good then. It was sort of June, I think it was early June that I quit, 2017. And I had about 3 to 4 weeks, and I was really getting somewhere. And this place is a mess, but it was a hell of a worse mess than it is now. There's a lot in here, but it's organised, mostly organised anyway. It certainly wasn't before. And after about a month I just fell apart, and I think all the stuff that had been going on, because even not getting things done here, it's also being in that negative state of mind. You don't even have the time to process what's happened, what you're going through, what things have affected you. And I think I finally had that time, and everything just hit me all at once. And it was summertime. I purposely thought, I'm going to quit now. It's summer. I had to work a few weeks' notice, and I'd realised that in the April I was ready to call it quits. And yeah, I lost the summer really, because I just wasn't all right at all, really. And I had a couple of really bad bouts like that, both actually around the summertime that year and then the year after. And it's really strange, because although I was off for 2 years, it only feels like 1 year, because everything's all kind of merged into one. So I've had all this time off, which I'm quite frustrated. I've had all this time off, and I've not really achieved anywhere near what I could have done. I mean, I've achieved something. There's things I've done, the steps I've taken. I mean, obviously I've set that little room up. I've started to do that. I've started to do the YouTube videos, which I'm finding to be a positive thing, and I'm getting to interact with new people and make new friends, which is great, which is what I need more than anything, really. But yeah, with respect to the physical stuff, for someone like me who wants to build, I mean, that desire to make things and create doesn't seem to go away, which is a good thing. It's a positive thing that even at the worst of times I still think, oh, I'd like to have a look at that and have a go at that. Maybe that's what's kept me going. But that step of turning that thing into something finished is really hard when you're not in the right frame of mind. You don't want to touch things, and if you do, I've certainly found I can be quite short fused and perhaps lose my temper with things a bit, and at that point it's not worth it. You've not got the time frame available that you want, and it becomes rushed, and at that point it's not a project, it's not a hobby or an interest, it's just another job, and it's one you're not even getting paid for. So why the hell would you want to sit and do it when you get home from work? So you just shelve it. What's the point? Unfortunately, one further issue to add to it all was that my dad then died about 3 years ago now. I think it's 3 years ago this month. And I ended up having to take most of the stuff in him, and most of it was left to me. Most of the interest that he had, the bigger things, had ended up being left to me anyway. But also at that particular time, I was the only one that was really had any capacity to take anything in, not physical capacity because I was already overloaded, but the means to do something about it. And you've not seen the other half of this room. There's a lot of stuff in here that's not actually mine. There's books, a whole load of books that were from my dad's, a whole load of stuff stacked up in that corner there. Some of this stuff is obviously mine. Another TV, circuit boards and things, and I've got a whole corner there full of various stereo equipment and speakers and things that I've got nowhere proper to set them up. And it's a real shame. They're just sat there doing nothing, and it's difficult to decide. Do I get rid of them or not? If I was set up properly, then no, I would want to use them. But getting to that point when things have become so overloaded, it's difficult. It's very difficult, and with all the emotional strains as well. In particular, I mean, obviously, it depends on the kind of person you are. Some people aren't sentimental at all. I am, and sometimes I really do wish I wasn't. But there's all these books here, and it's like, yeah, they were his books. Some of them have got things written in them. Some of them I even bought him. But am I going to read them? Do I keep them? Do I get rid of them? It's so difficult. And this is obviously this is even harder than deciding where do I give up on a project. This is even harder when it's this kind of thing as well. So I do very much sympathise with people who are trying to reduce what items they've got for whatever reason. It can be very, very hard to make the decisions. And I sympathise with people who have been trying to do positive things in their life, and their lives have been disrupted to the point that those positive things have just dwindled. I jokingly refer to this sort of area of my house, like a place like this, I often jokingly call it the graveyard of good intentions, and it's quite a funny expression to me, but there is a really negative side to that. I mean, there's an awful truth to that. There is so many good intentions here, there's so many good intentions here that I had, and they've just laid here to die and not be fulfilled. And I think that's also one of the aspects that makes it so hard to part with the items, because it's almost an acceptance of defeat. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's, I don't know, painting a picture or building an old computer. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's something that you really want to do and it's something you have a love for, it's very hard to say, well, do you know what, actually, perhaps I should give up on that one and do something else. Again, I think I've shown some of this cupboard. I think probably more this area here on one of my last videos where I had tower cases and various things. Another one of the things a couple of things that Michelle brought up in the video. One I think was the last post was asking about DVDs and CDs and whether to keep them, get rid of them, just keep the discs, or the discs and the inlays, things like that. Interestingly enough, I'd say at least 15 years ago, I made the decision to throw away all the cases to all my CDs and DVDs, and I bought a whole load of those big wallets, the zip-up wallets where you get 4 discs per page and 4 on each side, because I'd got not a brilliant CD collection, but a few, and I realised I want more discs, and it's just going to keep growing and growing, and I'm going to need more wall space for all of this stuff. It's more stuff to have to move, more weight to lug around, because I didn't have my own home then. And I think what actually pushed it with that was a transition from using discs to MP3s, because at that point in time I lived in a house with 4 other friends, and we set up a Linux server with all our CDs on, basically, which we just ripped them all and put them on there, and they kind of became redundant. So I made the decision then, not really even anything to do with perhaps the physical space, perhaps thinking about it. And I do think that's a good idea. If you're not that bothered about the cases, some things have special cases, but well, you can either keep them or not. It's a tough one. Obviously discs, they're small things, but you get a couple of hundred of them. There's a fair bit of weight there and a fair bit of volume of stuff you've got to store. And another one that was mentioned was paperwork, and this cupboard here is pretty much this bottom section. I think the couple of small sections is all paperwork and photos, and again, sadly not all of this is mine. A lot of this came from my dad's, and he was a bit of a paperwork hoarder, and I've just not had the mental energy to go through it and scan the odd bits that will need scanning, or scan the photos, because I would like to do that and get rid of the rest. It's not an easy thing to deal with, but it needs doing. And really the answer is to do a bit every day. But again, it comes into that issue of building a routine and having the drive to keep having a go at it and chipping away at it each day. But again, as I say, if you're in the state of mind where you come home and you've had enough, you're not going to do it. It doesn't matter. You can't force yourself to do something you don't want to do. No matter how many lists you write, no matter how many big pieces of paper you put on your desk that list the thing you should be doing when you get home, or you put it on your desk like I've done downstairs, if you don't want to do it, you're just going to ignore it. It isn't going to get done. Or if you're not in the mood, the frame of mind, you haven't got the drive, whatever word you want to use, you're not going to do it. And then all of these things then become another burden, another thing dragging you down. So I just thought that was a bit of an insight into perhaps a bit behind the scenes of things with me and my little channel of trying to do little projects that don't really seem to be getting anywhere again at the minute. They're getting further than they were, because they were never getting done at all. So things are gradually picking up pace. Obviously at the moment, as I say, I've started a new job, and really that's had to be my priority. It's critical that I get a new job nailed down, get an income nailed down, and have some stability. That has to be a priority. And I realise, other things are going to suffer while that's going on. That's just the way it is. And I've got a good opportunity, so I'm certainly not going to allow that to be damaged in any way, and I'm not going to throw it away. As I got to a point after the third week, I was really struggling, and I was ready to walk away, and I'm very glad I didn't. Very glad I didn't. It's very easy to retreat to the comforts of what you know, even if what you know is unpleasant, which I think is actually why it's very hard to quit a job that you don't like, or that's causing you a lot of distress and upset, because there's still, no matter how hard it is, there's still that comfort of knowing what to expect, even if expectation is another miserable day. You at least know where you are with it, whereas you walk away from it, it's difficult, because you think, well, what am I going to do? I mean, I was fortunate in some respects. I'd saved up some money. There were other things I wanted to do with that money, which obviously now I can't do because I've taken the time out of work, which is a frustration. But I think it got to a point for me where that was a necessary thing I had to do. I was already in this state long before the work situation got worse. There's many things that have gradually dragged me down, well before I even moved into my house. Yeah, there's been a lot of things I've thought about, and again, this sort of relates to the stuff, the physical stuff aspect of things. I think Michelle brought up the time is money line in her video. I'm pretty sure she did. And it's something a lot of people say, oh, time is money, and money is also time. It is. You want some money for something that you want to buy, you have to go to work, and you have to give up your time to do that. And it's the same with these projects, and do I keep this or don't I keep it? If you keep it, there's some cost to keeping it. There's either it's in your mind and you're processing and you're thinking, well, I've got all this stuff, and do I want it? Do I need it? There's the financial cost of buying things, and it's really made me think about it. I mean, obviously, you spend 2 years off of work, you end up doing a hell of a lot of thinking. I've certainly reevaluated pretty much everything and everyone in my life. Made some fairly harsh decisions and changes, really. One thing I've certainly thought is, the time is money, money is time. But both of those resources come from one resource that's a really limited resource that I think is so easy to overlook, and that's your lifespan. If you think about, I'm going to buy, say, a new phone, say it's, I don't know, £500 smartphone, or £1,000 smartphone even. If you've already got one that's okay, but you want the latest new one, if you've got loads of money, fine. But if you haven't, I think, well, how much of your working life is it going to cost you to obtain that? And are you actually going to get any more out of it? Is it going to make your life any better by doing that? And I tend to now think about the cost as time. You're going to have to go to work for that much time to obtain the money to buy that thing. If you think of it as, am I willing to live that much time of my life less to obtain that thing, it makes it a bit easier to decide whether or not it's worth it. And I certainly am, I'm not working, like I say, crazy hours or anything. I'm doing a normal, not 9 to 5 type job, but a little long, 8:30 till 5. It's not a major deal. I've not got a massive travel, I've not got a massive journey either end at all. It's ridiculous. I couldn't have asked for anything better. But even I'm still thinking, well, the work-life balance, am I happy with it? And I think if it's possible for someone to get in a position where they don't have to work as hard as they perhaps otherwise could and put as many hours in by giving up some of these things that we spend our money on, even some of these projects, it's like, was it worth buying all this stuff? Well, at this point, no, because it's all sat here doing nothing. Pissing me off, really. It's taking up space and time, and I'm making an idiotic video about it all. Was it worth it? Maybe I could have had less time at work if I found a less stressful job, earning less money, but being able to go home and be free of that worry coming home. I mean, I've been fairly fortunate there. My job worries haven't really come home with me. I've not had a very high-end stressful job in that respect. But I think it does bear thinking about, is it worth it? Is whatever thing it is that you're spending that money on, that you're running after, is it worth it? Are you actually getting something that's making you feel better and happier? I think it's worth thinking about. And I think the exact same thing applies to the item's ownership. If I hold on to that item, if I hold on to some of these books, what am I getting? Is a sense of guilt even of getting rid of them? Because I think there is a level of guilt. Throwing things away or giving them, I don't have to say throwing, getting rid of doesn't have to mean they go in the bin. I actually think, and this is a good point, I think giving things away, selling them is obviously nice because you get a bit of money, but again, it's not always worth it. It's not worth the hassle, the time, the disruption of trying to sell something and get 50 pence for it, and it's perhaps cost you half an hour of work. It's not worth it. It's easy to get in that trap and go on eBay and list 50 blooming books and get nothing for them, and you think, well, that's taken me ages and I've had to go to the post office and travel around, and it's not worth it. Not worth it. So you sort of think, well, I'll hang on to it then, because there's a reluctance then to give it away or to throw it away. But if you can give something to someone else, I always think that's a nice thing if they really want it, because then someone else is getting some use and pleasure out of it. They're probably also inheriting the problem that you've been trying to get rid of, but that's their choice. So I think there is that, or taking things to charity shops. Now, car boots is another option, but again, for a car boot to be worth the time and effort, you've really got to have enough that you can take, that people are going to buy, and obviously you've got to have the capacity to take it. I mean, books again is a problem, because whilst in some respects they're a good thing to get rid of like that, they've got to be things that people want to buy. And you know, like with books, it's the sheer weight of them, lugging them around, and is it worth it? Is it worth the hassle? So that's going to be about it for this one. It's gone on for far too long already, as usual. Thanks to TheLastPost for the original question. Thanks to Michelle for the original video response. And if you've watched this all the way through, thank you to you as well. And no, the contents of the desk haven't just been thrown on the floor or in a box or a bag to get them out of the way. They have actually been put away finally.